feature presentation.
Welcome back to another Untitled streaming review. I am one of your hosts, Matt Rohrbeck, alongside, he's allergic to tomatoes, but he is Tomato Meter approved, Eric Marchin.
Matt, we're going to be talking a lot about kyber crystals today, I have a feeling. Yes.
Yeah, a lot about kyber crystals. Yes, today we are reviewing all 9 episodes of Star Wars Visions, the animated anthology series, which is now streaming on Disney Plus. So not 9 different studios, but
7. It's 7
different
in total. Yeah.
Anime studios tackling, with the overall theme, which Eric just kind of mentioned after you see these 9 episodes of Jedi, Sith, and lightsabers. Essentially, it's kind of like the overall theme of all 9 episodes.
I'm just thinking to myself, sorry, I just thinking about the kyber crystals again. Like I just have that. So the Criterion of Uncut Gems is coming out in December.
Does it come with a crystal?
It would be amazing if somebody like edited the that sort of.
If you put that gem in a lightsaber, I don't want to know what comes out.
I know exactly the opal. Yeah. But it would be just amazing. Uncut kyber crystals, and Sandman is trying to get
as
those.
A Jedi.
Oh yeah, I would be totally down for that.
We're gonna be mostly spoiler free. I think. I mean, the episodes are out there for you guys to watch now. If you don't want anything to be spoiled, I would say go watch them. I think they are worth watching, and then come back and listen to our review. Or if you just want to kind of hear our thoughts, we'll probably talk about specific moments, but maybe not give away the biggest things. But I think it's going to be hard to kind of dance around certain things.
Well, especially because of the length of them, right? They vary from, 8 or 9 minutes to 13 or 14 minutes. And again, like they're short. So the whole point of them is to kind of, have this kind of punchline, and the punchline in this, not comedically per se, but is like, a twist or sort of a variation on the themes within the Star Wars universe. And watching this, we were talking about it right before we started recording. You got to talk about the dubs versus the subs, and to quote the band TLC, I don't want no dubs.
That is an ongoing debate in the anime community and just people who watch anime in general, of should you watch a dubbed version or should you watch a subbed version, or what is your preference? It's not even should you can consume it any way you want. And I think that is the way you should watch this, whatever you prefer. I do have a preference. I think Eric does as well. And I'm not even going to say I'm that all the time, because sometimes I'm lazy. Sometimes I don't. I'm an ignorant piece of garbage that wants to just kind of have it in English sometimes, but
or just lazy, right? Like in terms of not wanting to read the subtitles and train your eyes to go back and forth, right?
So I think the default that Disney gives you is English on this, and it has a pretty star-studded cast. You have people like DK Drift King himself, Brian T, Lucy Liu, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Bobby Moynihan, Neil Patrick Harris, Alison Brie. You got
David Harbour.
David Harbour, Simu Liu, Masioka, Kyle Chandler, Henry Goulding, and more. Lots of people. George Takei, Jamie Chung, tons and tons of like A-list, people who have worked with Disney a lot in the past and things like that. But Eric, I don't know if you want to kick it off there. You mentioned that is the ongoing debate. How did you watch this? You said you had some issues.
Yes, well, I ended up watching it with the English dubs, and I feel like I'll be rating this anthology series, this Japanese-American co-production, on a bit of a curve, because I prefer the subs, and it was just more of a technical thing with me where it wasn't working in terms of getting the subs to sort of switch over. So I just kind of gave in and watched the dub version of all 9 episodes. There originally was going to be 10, but then they basically...
The Ninth Jedi got put into 1.
Yes. Yeah. So I almost kind of think that they should have put the Ninth Jedi as the 9th
they
episode.
Probably should have. Yeah, I agree with that.
Considering where the last episode ends on this really sort of dour note.
Yeah.
But yeah, like watching it, you can tell there's something about manga and anime when it's adapted into, television or films
In English.
in English, and that translation, there's something there, because a lot of the times what the characters are doing, they're externalizing their feelings, or basically summarizing the plot
Yeah,
as
the
they're talking.
exposition and things like that as they're kind of, actually doing the plot.
Especially when it comes to family, anything that comes, that comes across to do with, like, sort of a rift between sisters or brothers or what have you. There's always this sort of summarization of everything that's gone up until this point and what it all means. And I think when it's delivered by English speaking actors, or actors that are generally, their first language is English, there's something lost there. And I even think in the writing itself, where it just kind of, it doesn't always work. Like, we've seen, you could go on YouTube and see videos of, like, how certain shows, when they were adapted for American audiences, like something like Pokemon, for example, they would take sort of, like, even just the smallest kind of, like, cultural differences and tweak them slightly, to make them more quote unquote accessible for
Palatable, yeah.
palatable for North American audiences. I think of, like, sort of, the food in Pokemon specifically, or even in Dragon Ball Z, a show that I think both of us grew up watching.
Yep.
There's a lot there that you can tell that, the voice acting in that aren't big name stars or anything like that, but there's still this sort of this desire to over explain everything, to just basically give you the plot summarization in a way that kind of feels like it's getting away from the moment, the scenes,
which is a very anime thing.
Yes.
But then I agree with you, when you then translate that dialogue into English and have big name actors saying that dialogue, it's more jarring, I would say. Because I will say that I watched, sorry, go ahead.
No, especially when they're giving a performance as well as just reading the lines. Like, you look at someone like David Harbour is doing this kind of very reserved, low kind of voice that, is calm, cool, and collected, to kind of represent the poise and centered qualities of the Jedi. But when he's delivering lines in that kind of, talking like this, and telling you exactly what's happening in the Elder, um it kind of feels a little bit silly at times. And again, he's doing what he can with the material that how it's written, but it just kind of feels like there is something more to gain or appreciate if you're watching the subtitled version, where maybe something there is it's more earnest.
I can get into that. So we both watched all 9 episodes. You watched the dub version. I originally watched the dub version, and then I've gone back to watch the first 3 episodes so far, the subtitled version in Japanese. So I also joined Kind of Funny on their Kind of Funny screencast for the
Shameless
first 3
plug.
episodes. Yeah. Of Star Wars Vision. So you guys can go over to their YouTube channel or podcast services. Just go Kind of Funny screencast. It's the first 3 episodes. I chatted with those guys, had a blast. So I went back and watched those 3 episodes that we reviewed, subtitled this morning. And I think far and away I enjoyed the subtitled versions better. I just felt like the delivery, and it just, these are pure anime stories that I'm kind of with Eric, where there is a disconnect, or when you hear a famous person's voice or the way that they deliver a line, in Japanese, and the way that these actors who are so good at what they do are delivering it, it doesn't feel as kind of strange as, you hear it in English, even when you're reading along with it. I do think some people did a better job than others. Like, I didn't mind the English language dub in the Duel, or I loved the Japanese version of Tatooine Rhapsody. I hated the English version.
It's
terrible. Hated it. I hated the English version. Like, I like
Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Bobby Moynihan just fine, but their voices are so distracting.
Yeah.
And then now, was the song Different from the
No,
version that
it's
was
a
in.
similar song, which they probably originally did in Japanese and then just did an English translation and kind of went with the same kind of
It's the most 2000
and like,
song I've
and it
heard in
is, and
quite
I
some
don't
time.
mind that, because even the guys on the Kind of Funny review that we just said, they brought up a good point, being like, why everyone's going crazy is probably because they've never heard music like this, right? Because it does feel like nothing you've heard in Star Wars. It feels very Earth mid 2000s
Yeah,
punk music,
it
right?
almost feels
Like
like you're listening to Sum 41 or Billy
yes,
Talent.
yeah. I thought of that as well, and like, and then I rewatched it in Japanese, and I thought it completely suited it so much more, and I enjoyed that episode so much more the second time, because it was my least favorite of all 9
Yeah.
when I watched it, the Tatooine Rhapsody episode. I did not love Alison Brie in the Twins episode. I thought Neil Patrick Harris was fine, but again, rewatching that in Japanese, I'm like, this is so much better. And then you go through and you get, I thought the Village Bride, the English language dub, was actually quite good. The Ninth Jedi, hit or miss on who was in that cast. You brought up David Harbour already. Kyle Chandler in TOB1 is fine, but I'm curious to go back and rewatch the rest of them in Japanese, because I feel like, if overall, I really love this series, and I said this, we've talked about this a lot, Eric, that like the shackles of the Skywalker saga are off, and we want Star Wars to kind of actually use this giant universe that they have and tell unique stories that aren't focused necessarily on Luke Skywalker or characters we already know. Looky here, the only episode that has characters that I know from other movies is my least favorite episode of the series, because I feel like when they're actually able to kind of show you different worlds and show you different cultures and show you different, people that we've never seen before in Star Wars and different stories we've never seen, that's when the series is at its best. And they're able to kind of do stuff that's completely unique and original. And we've seen a little bit of that in Mandalorian, but they still, Boba Fett, Tatooine, like there are planets that they go
Well, the
back to,
Jedi
and
as
they're
well.
but the Jedi, even in this series, are the main focus. But that is Star Wars to me. Like, as long as you get away from Luke Skywalker, the chosen one, Darth Vader, and like Anakin, like that thing, I'm fine. I love the Jedi, are the coolest part of Star Wars. The lightsabers are the coolest part of Star Wars. The Sith, one of the coolest part of Star Wars. So this whole show talks about those things, like and that stuff was inspired by Japanese culture too, right? Like,
Yes, well, I mean, the duel, which is my favorite of the 9 episodes, the way that it's animated, it looks like it was sort of rendered in charcoal, and
yeah,
it has this classic style that
grain, yeah,
deconstructs, the genre. It's paying tribute to Star Wars, but ultimately kind of feels like its own thing, even more so than the other 8 shorts. And that basically looks like you're watching, like, oh, what if Akira Kurosawa
yeah.
did an animated Star Wars short.
Mhm.
And you can tell that the influence from Seven Samurai and Yojimbo and Hidden Fortress are all there. And I think that if that one short wasn't in the group, I think I would have liked what's sorry, I'm drawing a blank on it, the Forest Bride, the
The
Village
Village
Bride,
Bride,
the
that was my
Village Bride,
favorite
where
episode.
I
Yeah,
feel like both of those are very similar
yeah,
in their sort of their structure and their story points overall, where you
fair.
have the duel, this Ronin-esque character coming into the town as though he were, again, a classic gunslinger type. And what we find out about him is really interesting. And I really love that his droid is wearing a casa. I think that was kind of just like cute and in a short that's very serious and dark in tone. But then you have sort of, the imperialists kind of coming in and basically trying to tax this village. And then in the Village Bride, you have the separatists coming in and wanting human collateral in order to keep this planet, that's an environmental-esque sort of planet, at bay. The people of this planet are very much one with the planet. and it kind of just felt a little bit repetitive there. But
I
what I
guess
did
you
like,
run that risk because you're giving them to different studios and you don't
yes,
necessarily, you're kind of letting people tell the story that they want. So you're getting a couple ones that are similar. Yeah.
yeah, and again, The Village Bride is very, very good. I think the score is great. I think um the English dub voices are quite compelling overall. If I were to pick probably in terms of vocal performances for the English dub, that would be the best one. But there is just something where it's like I feel the duel kind of got it perfectly, and it was like watching that one I was like, man, this is incredible. But then
Yeah.
again, with anthology series, and I've talked about this on the irregular show and we've talked about it many times even in other reviews, where you run the risk of not always being consistent. And I feel that sometimes that some of these are better than others, but I am willing to go back and watch the sub versions, because if you say, Tatooine Rhapsody is better as a sub version, I will go back and watch that, because that was the one for me as well that didn't work.
It
And it
didn't
was
work.
just
The rest of them I
partly,
liked. I want to say at least really liked to loved. I liked every single episode except for that one until went back and rewatched it. Is it still my least favorite out of the group? Yes. It's just music's not really my thing, and like I like that, he's still he escapes what I thought is Order 66 at the beginning, and I like that he uses the power of music but uses kind of his Jedi training of being like, I'm not going to fight this with violence. I'm going to fight this with rock music. And I kind of like that. But I agree with you. The English dub really kind of threw me off, and it made me not enjoy that episode.
yeah, and especially again when you have someone like Joseph Gordon-Levitt whose voice is so distinct, and it kind of just feels a little flat in the performance, where half the time he's just shouting,
Yeah.
and not really kind of emoting or adding anything that resonates with that character, where like I
Yeah.
agree that like him being a Padawan, potentially in sort of his story seems very compelling.
Hmm.
um but yeah, and I just kind of felt that some of the cycle did repeat itself. And as much as I do like the Jedi, I also again feel that you can even get away from some of
And
that
I agree
even
with
more.
that. I almost think after watching the series that I'm thinking from my marketing brain, if you were going to give people a brief and said, here's what we want you to make, like, here's kind of the things to touch upon, like, it almost felt like the theme of this season of Star Wars Visions was the Jedi and the
Yeah,
Sith and lightsabers, especially. Like, I felt like how this show treats lightsabers as these like incredible mythic kind of like weapons, and like how everyone treats them with such high regard in the whole show, that whether it's kyber crystals to the actual building of a lightsaber to just all of that, I think is really, really cool. And that's almost kind of what you see in every episode. So I totally see what you're saying, where it can kind of maybe feel repetitive. But the one thing I'll push back on is that I never think it overstays its welcome. And it's actually kind of amazing how much emotion and action and musical moments and everything they can cram into 12 to at the most 22 minutes, right? But like most episodes were between 12 and 15 minutes long. And I was really kind of infatuated with the majority of this series. Like, I felt like the different art styles in each episode, having different studios, different composers come in, like, it all felt very Star Wars, but each episode felt completely fresh because of, you're changing up the art style. I think with What If, not to just compare it with another like a Disney series happening, but it's an animated Disney series that's an established franchise. Like,
that's also an
um,
anthology.
that's also an anthology series, but then it looks like that will all connect where none of this will connect.
No, that's a
Um,
question I wanted to ask you about, because I was looking on Wikipedia where all the information is correct.
I mean,
And
a lot of the times it's vetted, and you can find good information there.
yeah, but basically, like it says, okay, like where each episode takes place within the Skywalker timeline, and then you have the creator of this series coming out and saying, no, it's not canonical in any way
Yeah, but it can
whatsoever.
still take place in a time frame without it being canon. Does that make
Right.
sense? Like,
I
you still are
guess.
looking at what's happened, and then you're going, I want to place my story here, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's part of the canon. Like, it's not actually, like, I think you could go either way with some of this stuff. Like, I think
Right.
um some of it could be in canon. The duel might, it says it's in an alternate like timeline universe kind of thing where it's like not part of the main thing, but I think, and just inspired by all those things that you mentioned, where I think you could pick and choose. And if someone really, if they find out people really love the twins episode or they really love X episode or
They'll
whatever,
bring
right?
them back,
Then they'll
right?
bring them back in some way, or we'll see them introduced in live action stuff, or we'll do like, I think that could be where we're going. Or maybe just go, everyone loved them, let's make a whole series about them, an anime series just on them. Or they'll do what we thought they were doing in What If, where in a season 2 we'll get more, episodes from those studios.
That was my
I
other major criticism. I just
Yeah,
want to jump on that quickly is that a lot of these episodes don't necessarily feel self-contained. They almost feel like at the end it's
they're
almost
leaving it
like
open.
they're
Yeah.
leaving it open as if like, would you like to know more?
Yeah.
It's almost like a survey kind
But
of
I think
thing.
it's okay. Like, I could go either way. Like, if you just ended a lot of these, I'd be fine with it. And if you leave them open to show more from depending on what people like, because like you said, anthology series, they're going to be ones that people really like and ones that people, don't really care about. And we're going to find that out now that all 9 episodes are out. But I think more episodes than not, I really enjoyed, just because of the change in art style, the change in characters, and the change in settings. And like, even though they all had to do with the Jedi and ultimately, dealing with that battle between light and dark, and I kind of vibed with that, and I liked getting away from Luke Skywalker. We know about the Jedi, we know about Luke, we know about that whole story. Some of this stuff takes place after Rise of Skywalker, even some of it between, Jedi and episode 7 and
And even
stuff like
before
that. Like,
Phantom Menace, the
yeah, so
Elder is
like,
supposed to take place before then.
yeah, so like that stuff is really really cool, and it's exactly what I've been wanting from Star Wars. Is just, we have this giant universe. I'm cool to focus on cool stuff that we like the Jedi. Just get away from characters we've already know. Like,
But it
the
is hard to, because Luke is part of Luke's journey is becoming a
he
Jedi,
is
right?
the Jedi. Yeah.
So tying those two things are so tied together that even though I
I don't
agree with
know.
you,
Yeah.
I disagree there, because I think that them getting away from the direct Skywalker line or involving
Yeah.
characters that can spin off is great. And I know I'm sounding more critical. I really like this series, but I
Yeah.
do have to disagree there, where the Jedi is so tied to the Skywalker experience that it is a little bit difficult to just unravel that. And maybe this helps because you
Yeah.
have, certain characters in post and pre and during the events of the actual sort of mainstay franchise, and even with some of the spin-offs to consider as well. But it's just hard to, because when you think of the Jedi, the first person you think of is, Luke battling Vader, and Luke trying to win over his father back to, the light. And for that, it's hard to not associate that when you think of Jedi. Like, you think Jedi, you think
But
Luke, you
I
think.
think Jedi is so much more than that personally. Like, the Jedi have been around for, forever, way before Luke, before Anakin even. And there's so much rich history there. And like, even after Luke, they'll be around, even though the movie's called The Last Jedi and Rey and, is a Skywalker now. Spoilers, sorry. But like, you should see it by now. I really do feel like there's such a rich history and like legend that you can kind of pay tribute to, and I think this show is doing a great job with that. And that's why it never felt, that's such a small period of time in Star Wars, that like, I get that it's the most important time, I'm using air quotes, but like, I personally am totally open to seeing, they're doing the High Republic right now in the book series, and like, they're like, the Jedi are always going to be the thing in Star Wars. Like, I love bounty hunters. I love the different kind of things that we can kind of get in the Star Wars universe. But like,
Give me Dash Rendar.
that's what Dash Rendar will return at some point. I'm hoping in the Boba Fett series that's coming this year that Dash Rendar will pop up. Even though, is he dead? Like, I forget what happens in this story.
Yeah,
Like, will
Dash
he be
Rendar does die in
yeah,
Shadow of the Empire.
right. So You can fix that. That's not technically canon, so we'll
Yeah, I
fix
mean, if
that.
the Emperor can come back, spoiler alert,
God.
then anybody can come
Yeah,
back.
there's some issues, but again, I was cool. Like I love like lightsabers. As I was a kid, like all I wanted was a lightsaber. Right, as an adult, all I want is a lightsaber. Eric,
We
if
were
I
two
could,
different children. I wanted a
if
Rancor
yeah, okay, cool. That doesn't surprise me in the least.
and the pit. I love
I
the
had
pit.
Luke's green lightsaber, and like as an adult, all I've ever wanted, not all I've ever wanted, but I want so badly to go to Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland or Disney World, and I want that gradient lightsaber that the twin has in the twin episode, where it's like kind of goes from light blue to pink, because it's something I've never really seen in, as you see, my background is pink and blue. And like
It's almost like a
this,
popsicle.
the gradient, yeah, it looks like that rainbow, like rocket popsicle. And like that lightsaber is so dope. And like, that's what this series to me did, is just go, oh yeah, lightsabers are awesome. Jedi are awesome. And I want to see more stories that don't revolve around, the Skywalkers. And like I also want to see bounty hunter stories, or I want to see, just random one-off stories that don't have to do with any of that stuff, and just people chilling on a planet, some farmers or something. Like I'm
More
totally
moisture
down.
farmers in our
Yeah.
anthology series. I want to see
So
what they're up to.
I'm down for all of that, but I just liked, how this kind of spun it on its head, and you had like a, Sith versus Sith, like someone who's left, like the Ronin in that first episode, he's left the Sith and he's hunting down other Sith. And I think that's really cool. And like each episode had a moment where I'm like, that is fucking awesome. And like, that's kind of why I loved this series as a whole. And it all felt different with that same lens of like, what's the coolest thing about Star Wars? It's the Jedi and the lightsabers. And like, let's just go really deep into that. And, or not even deep, because this stories are pretty, short, but I was amazed at how much they could cram into that, and how much emotion, like, especially in that Village Bride episode, or even, the Ninth Jedi, like being such a, it's the longest episode, but having that amount of like kind of twists and where that goes, which was unexpected
It's
to me
kind of
as
a
well.
play on Agatha Christie a little
Yeah,
bit too.
totally. Yeah.
Where it's not necessarily a murder mystery, but it's a mystery revealing, like, who's who, and kind of,
Who done it? Yeah.
yeah.
Do you
And
want to go through like,
I even
sorry, go
liked the
ahead.
last one in the sense of the animation style for, to some people might seem quite crude, but what it reminded me the most of was Ralph Bakshi's work from
Okay.
the 1970s and 80s. And for people that don't know who Ralph Bakshi is, he was the guy that basically helped animate and create the original Lord of the Rings animated film that was just the two installments, the
Oh, cool.
Fellowship and Two Towers. And then he made a number of fantasy movies into the 70s and 80s, and the one that it reminded me of the most was a film called Wizards. And in that, these sort of weird, almost like stormtrooper-esque characters, but they're like red and white and yellow, ride these giant like creatures, and those creatures look exactly like the ones that are in that ninth episode.
Yeah, no, and I even love seeing like the designs in some of it looking like Ralph McQuarrie's original kind of art. Like you saw that in that Twins episode again, like in their, um, what do they call them? They're like armor, kind of dark armor that they're wearing, kind of looks like the Ralph McQuarrie stuff, just in a Sith version. Yeah, I think it's awesome. Eric, do you want to quickly go through maybe like rapid fire? We'll go episode by episode and just give brief thoughts of what we thought. I know we've
Yeah,
talked about
sure.
some of them, but I think we've kind of given an overall thing that we both liked it. I really do think that you should go and watch the subbed version. I think you should watch both, honestly. It's only a 2 hour and 20-minute investment. Like, watch whatever one you want to watch first, because you probably have a preference. And then I highly suggest you just go back and rewatch. If you enjoyed it, go back and rewatch the other version, because I think it's really interesting, and the tone almost feels completely different in certain episodes, just based on, the dialogue being in a different language, in its original language that it was written in. And if you, yeah, it was great subbed, so I can't wait to finish watching it subbed. So let's just go through episode by episode. If you have any highlights, Eric, that you really liked from it, and then kind of say like liked it, didn't like it, loved it, or whatever. So the first episode is The Duel, which we've kind of already focused on a lot. It's that kind of black and white. I loved that only the lights were in color. Like, I thought that was actually a really nice touch. Shout out to I don't know the race. I think it's the Doug. Sebulba was in the
Oh yeah,
protocol
I
droid.
laughed at that when I
Like,
saw
it was
that.
just
Yeah.
a brief shot, and it's whatever race Sebulba is. I
Well,
think it's
Bosk
Doug.
as well, seeing like a
Bosk, yeah.
Bosk type
Yeah.
bounty hunter, being a defender.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, this is the favorite of the
Cool.
standout episode of the Nines. And
Started
again, it
strong.
feels
Yeah.
like it deconstructs or goes back to, because Lucas was as much influenced on Akira Kurosawa in Japanese cinema as he was, Flash Gordon in sci-fi serials. So
which is why this series I think is so cool, because it's paying tribute to that. I think.
Yeah, and it's going back to the basics, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's going back to what made Star Wars to begin with, those
that
influences.
Umbrella lightsaber, pretty dope.
Yeah, and again, the Kasha that the Ronin's,
that's on the R2
oh
droid.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah,
love
and
it.
the
I
R2
need more
droids,
hats on droids.
Yeah, I'm all for that. The cluster rocket that that droid sends out, I think, is really dope. We won't say what happens, but ultimately how the battle ends, I think is really kind of cool in the waterfall sequence. I thought her look, Lucy Liu's character, if in the English dub, I'll just reference that. She looked dope when her like kind of cloak goes off and her big hair and stuff. I thought she looked awesome.
And it is pretty violent. I think that's the other thing we should mention, that it's not necessarily for young children. If you're thinking of like,
it is more violent than I expected. I wrote that note down, where it is animated, so that's probably how they get away with that. But
right, but there is some stuff, and even in that first episode, that I was like, wow, this is like, I would not show a 6 or 7 year old.
I wrote a couple notes in a couple episodes being like, damn, that's dark for
and I just love characters that are very patient. And I love when, like, he tells the guy that's kind of working on his droid, to get this done before the tea kettle. Yeah, like stuff like that.
That's
I just
his
love
cue.
that stuff.
That's his cue, right? Like, and it's so awesome. Like, and he's just like, you better have that done. Not even threatening him, but almost just like, please get this done because I need this. I thought that was awesome. Yeah, really love this episode as well. I'd say it's probably, I forget what my ranking, I already put it on Letterboxd, but I'm sure it'll change as I rewatch them in Japanese as well. Tatooine Rhapsody, we already talked about that one kind of in depth as well, where it's about a young boy who is a Padawan who looks like after Order 66 escapes, gets saved by like Jabba's weird punk rock nephew or something, like played by Bobby Moynihan in the English dub.
Guy, right?
And,
is
Guy. It's like, was he Jabba's nephew? He's related to him.
He was
supposed.
He's basically supposed to take over the heir. Like, he's supposed to be like the next in line, and basically he refuses and doesn't want to be a crime lord, basically.
Yeah. So I think we've talked about it a lot. Didn't love JGL in this episode, and I just felt like the English dub was the weakest out of all of them, where it just didn't translate well with that mid 2000s kind of punk rock vibe, and even
it's too earthy, as you mentioned.
Yes,
like it feels like it is too much from our planet, not a galaxy far, far away.
And I love the idea, though, that I think it was Andy who brought it up on the review that we did, where it's like, yeah, but then that might be something that like no one has heard in the Star Wars universe because it's, very earthy sounding. And I like that idea. The music in the episode and even the score, they went with a more like rock score, not the classic kind of Star Wars sounding stuff. Because even when you get some of these, composers that worked on anime and stuff like that, like the Japanese sounding stuff with the Star Wars music sounds really awesome together. But in this, when you get that kind of like mid 2000s punk rock, even in the score, it just like completely doesn't
me out
work.
Of it. Like, I was waiting for like Stained or Puddle of Mud to show
I thought the art style was cute. I liked that. But
they
again,
look like Funko Pops, a lot of the characters.
They're like chibi a little bit, right? And like Jabba and Bib Fortuna and that
I will say this, Bib Fortuna is probably the cutest he's ever looked.
I have Bib Fortuna up there somewhere. He doesn't look terrifying. Like Jabba tapping his tail to the music, I thought was really kind of dope as well. And then just getting back to that like pod racing stadium is actually kind of fun too. Like,
but also but you think you would see a Doug there, right? And you don't.
Right, you don't. So if you didn't like this episode, I say go back and watch it in Japanese, because I enjoyed it way more in Japanese. I felt like
this one's also probably more for like, I think kids could watch this one. Yeah,
that one's the most childish, and I don't want to say childish, but like for kids.
Yeah.
Episode 3 is The Twins, which we covered with Neil Patrick Harris and Allison Brie. Did not love Allison Brie's vocal performance in this. I thought Neil Patrick Harris was fine, but I do like this episode more than anything. Eric is reminded me of what you were talking about with that exposition of like, we were twins of the dark side, and then going into like the exposition kind of flashbacks kind of thing. And even though it's only like really, really quick, I think that is the stuff that doesn't sound super great when it's just English dialogue. And Allison Brie just sounds off. Like she didn't sound menacing enough, I feel, or something like that.
And of the 3 that we've talked about so far, it's the most that kind of reminds me of like 90s anime, where it's whether it's Sailor Moon or Gundam Wing or something like that.
Gundam,
like
Robotech Nick brought up, because I know Nick's a big Robotech fan. And I think the last act of this episode, it's a big kind of insane anime style fight with very colorful, with pinks and blues and lightning, and the gradient lightsaber I brought up, and like jamming a kyber crystal into her dark armor and kind of getting these spider arms, and then having like lightsaber whips and stuff. So like I really liked the action in this, and I love the color, and I actually did really like the art style. The vocal performances kind of threw me off a little bit. But I like the X-Wing stuff. And then the Super Saber is what I was calling it. Like when he goes Super Saber, and then I really liked too. I thought that was cool.
The other question I had for this one though was, are their abilities so strong, or is it because they've been basically, created to serve a purpose that they're able to survive outside, or is there like a force field around that? Because the whole time I was thinking,
someone brought up, and I think it's just suspension of disbelief. Again, I think it goes back to, you throw the rules out the window in these kind of things where they kind of get to make up their own Star Wars rules. And like, because I feel like that's just part of the anime thing, is like, oh, let's fight on the outside of these twin Star Destroyers, which is also really cool. And I even I brought up the Ralph McQuarrie stuff, but I also think the Planet Destroyer ship is almost kind of like poking fun at that again, like another Planet Destroyer, but it's on twin
Star Killer 2.
Yeah. So them being outside, I don't know, it could be either like they are the dark Luke and Leia or something like that, kind of, and like maybe they are very strong with the Force in that way, and it's kind of a juxtaposition on the chosen one, the twins or whatever. But the
twins from the Matrix Reloaded.
Yeah. So I still really enjoyed this episode. I love the colors and the art style. And
it was solid. And again, I just had those like little questions there with the just the breathing thing. I thought that was kind of strange.
Episode 4 was The Village Bride, which is probably my favorite episode of the series for many of the same reasons Eric said about the first one. I think the duel and The Village Bride are fantastic. And very similar, but I see what you're saying there, Eric. But there's just something about the music and the art style in this, and just the tone throughout the whole thing, that I just loved the reveals at the end. I love that last battle. Like, I loved just the vibe of seeing what we've seen Star Wars weddings before, but like seeing this peaceful village and on this planet, like it's exactly what I was talking about, of seeing more of this universe and seeing different rituals. And the Jedi are a big part of the religion overall, but there's different kind of cultures and rituals people go through, and I liked seeing that in this episode. And,
do you know the Jedi that they were referring to when the protagonist comes to the planet, and the guy that she meets with the bucket head?
He's he talks about someone being on that planet or something like that. No, I'm not 100% sure. That might be based on something, or maybe it's just another was it his master or something?
Well, I thought it was hers. Like
hers. Okay.
Like she was the apprentice.
Okay.
To somebody like originally.
His bucket helmet was really cool though.
Yeah, but it also reminded me of Guns N' Roses bucket head.
Sure. Yeah.
But the other thing I did also question was I felt bad for the groom, because having to carry the bride up that steep hill, he's going to have serious hernia problems later on in life.
Absolutely. But you got to do what you got to do, man.
That's love,
that is
right?
love. I thought the costumes in this episode, that's what I love, like the designs of all the costumes.
Well, it's very colorful and everything,
too, right? Yeah. And I think that's why I vibe with it. And the reprogrammed kind of droids from episode 1 and 2, I forget what they're called. Are they the protocol droids? The Roger, like those droids, like seeing
the ones that are in Empire, right?
Like I liked the idea that they reprogrammed them and kind of took them over.
Oh, and that's another Japanese thing that's really important, I think, to mention in this one, and then also the one with the like the adoptive sister, is a character cutting their hair, the long sort of like,
which is a Jedi thing too, right?
yes,
But
but that's also
yeah,
a very Japanese thing as well, and
yeah.
and also even very much a Middle
Isn't it
Eastern
like
thing.
a sign of like what restart? Like, is it like
It's like
or starting
yeah,
fresh or
it's
like
starting fresh, but it's also like basically cutting yourself off from your family
right?
ties and
Okay.
like tradition, and like it says something specifically about like, in the case of mimicking the samurai, when you cut that off, that means you're not basically sort of living that lifestyle anymore, that you've gone rogue, so to speak.
I always thought she was just a Padawan up until that moment where she felt like she was now a Jedi, right? Because the Padawans grow that little
That braid,
ponytail
oh
thing. Yeah,
god, the Jedi
that
braid is so bad. It's so
it looks
bad.
better on some people than others, but
No, it
Anakin's does
doesn't look
not
good on
good.
anyone.
Ewan McGregor's did not look great.
It looks good on no one,
Obi-Wan's.
man. It's okay to not like something here,
I
and
think I
that
think she could
no.
rock it. She was rocking it.
She's an
So
animated character. I'm talking about real life actors. They should all.
I
It's
think
as
some
bad
people
as
can put.
Steven Seagal's ponytail. I'm
No,
sorry.
no,
Yes,
no, no.
yes.
I'm team braided
Okay,
Jedi tail.
you wear one for a week, and we'll see.
My hair got pretty bad during the pandemic. I should have put it into one of those
It's
Jedi
so bad. It's
braids.
so bad.
I love that. I got like during the final moments of that episode when the music comes in the final moments, like I literally got chills watching it where I'm like, I love Star Wars and this is why I love Star Wars. And there's like a great moment with her heels. She's wearing heels, but there's a great moment with her heels. And I just thought it was a fantastic like episode. And this is when I started to go, oh, these are all going to be about, the Jedi and lightsabers
The
and
Jedi
that kind.
way.
Then that leads into the Ninth Jedi, which Eric mentioned at the top of the show, was originally going to be 2 episodes, part 1 and part 2. But then they just decided we're putting these all out at once. Why not just edit it into one big episode? So it was 21 minutes, which is basically a length of a full episode of like an anime usually, right? Like with commercials and stuff like that. So yeah, this one we mentioned it was kind of like a not a whodunit, but a kind of a mystery kind of thing. The music here, I think, was like Ray's theme or like some of the stuff from episode 7. It sounded like that's what the music reminded me of most. I think Juro had a really, really dope costume. I thought the music in this episode was fantastic. The animation in this episode was super polished. And I just love that exploration of lightsabers, of having this guy who's like illegally building them
They're
and
like
trying to
mood
get
rings,
these.
though, weirdly.
Yeah, well, in this episode they were, right? Like, and I like that idea as well. Like, we've traditionally only seen lightsabers in like one way, at least in again, a lot of the stuff we're talking about is like mainstream Star Wars canon, right? Like Eric and I are big fans of all of the main Star Wars stuff, and then we dapper a little bit into, like, for me, the video games, comic books, but like the novels and stuff like that I don't think are something that we really
Yeah, I've only read Jabba's Palace, and
yeah.
that was like back in high school. So.
But I just like that those lightsabers adapt to who's using it. And I think that's such a cool concept. Like usually it's just you get a kyber crystal, it's colored. Like if you're Sith, you're gonna get a red one. If you're a Jedi, it's blue or green, maybe
If you're
purple.
Mace Windu, you're gonna
Yeah.
get
Yeah, you're gonna get purple or like stuff like that. And I like in this episode, they're like, no, it adapts to, like Eric said, a mood ring, which I think is really funny and like, but really cool. Of like, if you have evil flowing through you, it will be red, and if you are if you have good flowing through you, it might be blue, it might be green, depending on the thing, it might be pink or purple, like we saw. And I like that. It's such good storytelling for me of like through that where they don't even have to spoon feed it, they just give you that one line of dialogue, and then throughout the episode you see is the main girl Juro, is that
I think
or
so.
was
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
yeah
The daughter of the lightsaber
of
smith.
Simu Liu's character,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So her kind of like whole arc in this and the storytelling just through how her lightsaber is colored, I think is so great, is so awesome. And I think the twist in the episode was something I legitimately didn't see coming and I thought was really, really cool.
There's something clunky there though that I
We'll
wasn't
talk
sure
after,
worked
but
out as well
yeah.
with pertaining to one character and what happens with them halfway through a fight. But
Oh,
again,
I get what you're saying. Yeah, I know exactly what
yeah,
you're
it's
saying.
kind of
Yeah.
a weird like turn on a turn. And it just kind of feels like maybe if this was like a half an hour longer, they could have done something more with
It
that. Or
involves the purple lightsaber, which I
oh
just
yeah,
brought up too.
yeah,
Yeah. See,
yeah.
that's the middle ground.
Yeah, and oh, and I really loved the tea drinking droid in this one. I
Oh,
thought he was
yes.
amazing.
He's awesome. Just
Yeah.
awesome.
He
Um
like if I was a character in Star Wars, that would be me.
and then bringing up the violence, like I felt like some of the stuff in this episode was
This
quite
is not
dark
for
and
kids either.
quite violent. Like
But it
even
also
though it's
teaches
animated,
you
but
not to judge a book by its cover in terms of like who you suspect to be a Sith or like, you should never judge somebody based on just their looks, right? Like
I agree.
that's yeah.
And then it was just a love letter to lightsabers. So that's why I really loved that episode. Episode 6 was TOB1, which is kind of goes back to more of a cutesy art style. Reminded me of almost like a Dr. Robotnik Sega. This is that episode, right? With the little
Yeah,
chibi
yeah,
robot.
he's
Like,
kind of like Astro Boy, or
yeah,
what was the character that the war amputees always used in
right. I know what you're
those
talking about,
PSAs
but I
where he
forget.
talks
Yeah.
about like taking his arm back off.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he's kind of like that a little bit.
Yeah, and it reminded me of kind of a Sega, if people are video game people. Like the professor in this kind of reminded me of like a nice version of Dr. Robotnik. And there's no who creates Sonic, or no, who creates, maybe it's not Sonic I'm talking about. Good Professor Sonic.
But this character is also very much childlike, and there were times where I was thinking like, is he like
No, Mega
actually
Man, that's what I'm thinking of.
oh yeah, he does kind of look a little like Mega Man. Is he a droid or is he an android? Like I was thinking like maybe this was
I
like,
thought was he a real boy? Yeah.
yeah, because it has Pinocchio kind of qualities to this one as well, right? So
If you look at some Mega Man art, like the professor in this looks exactly like this is a very Mega Man ass episode, and that's what I was thinking of. That was my
that was
bad.
the original title of this episode, was Mega Man ass.
Like if you look at not even Dr. Wily, because he's the bad guy. Who is this guy? I'll send you this photo. Dr. Light. Dr. Light from Mega Man. Sorry, people are probably screaming at me as I'm search Dr. Light Mega Man, and that's exactly what I was thinking of this whole episode. And like even this little robo boy like is 100% Mega Man. So like this episode is basically like if Mega Man became a Jedi, which is really dope. But like
Yeah, he does look like that. And Pinocchio again, like there
yeah,
is that's like, I'm going to become a real boy, but instead of becoming a real boy, he becomes a
he's
real
a real
Jedi.
Jedi. Yeah, and I like that. Like again, not my favorite episode. I think this is maybe one of the more slight episodes where like I think all in all this might be one of the more forgettable ones.
Yeah.
And it's the two cutesy art styles are the ones that I just didn't vibe with. And that's another thing about this show is like I think your interest or how much you enjoy each episode, like if you're a big anime fan, there are going to be styles of anime that you like and dislike, where this is covering like a wide range of them. So there might be certain episodes where you're like, that art style just doesn't vibe with me, or I don't like that voice cast, or I don't like that studio even. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. And I liked this episode for some of the stuff that I was saying, like a robot wanting to become a droid wanting to become a Jedi. And it reminded me of Mega Man. I kept thinking Sonic, but I was thinking Mega Man. And yeah, I didn't have many notes on this episode because I was like, oh, that's cute. And then kind of moved on.
It's the one that also, in terms of its animation style or just even some of its themes, doesn't necessarily fit overall into the Star Wars sort of plethora. I think like this is the one that kind of feels the most far removed, and I think it's partly because of the animation being kind of geared towards maybe a younger audience,
Mm-hmm.
or looking sort of more adorable in its portrayal of the characters, but would probably also make a very great video game, as you mentioned with Mega Man. Now I
Yeah.
can't stop thinking about Mega Man.
Did you like Mega Man?
I did as a kid. I that was one of those characters that I just liked the design.
Oops, I accidentally wrote Megan Man. Episode 7 was The Elder. I liked the camaraderie here between the Master and the Jedi. The Hundun food. Again, I just like visiting these other planets and kind of seeing the different vibes of them all. And like the music in this, I thought was absolutely fantastic.
It's also a great procedural, I think, in terms
Yeah.
of investigating, a potential dark presence, and sort of, like the younger apprentice kind of being really eager to, find action and sort of get involved in sort of more than just patrolling the universe. Like, it's
Which is
almost like a
stuff we
police
got from
procedural with
yeah.
Jedis.
No, and I
This is
love
True
that.
Detective,
And
literally.
that's the great thing, and we talked about that in What If, in these anthology series, and I think that's something that you can do really well, is like take a subgenre and apply it to Star Wars, right? Like, we talked about one being a mystery. We had that in What If as well. And like we talked the classic, Kurosawa movie kind of in a short time frame. And like that's what's kind of fun about this. And this is also sort of a, not necessarily a mystery, but like you said, a procedural of like who this guy is and why he's on this planet and things like that. And this went back to the 90s anime that I kind of remember too, of just the
He's like
look
an
of
evil,
like
the Master Roshi,
yeah,
like
but like
the
if he was
villain.
totally
Yeah,
evil.
yeah, and
And
hadn't
he
eaten in a week.
right, and he was just such a cocky asshole that like
Well, James
um
Hong is so good at that, like in
yeah.
terms of voice work.
This is
Like,
I liked the voice cast in this episode. I thought they did
I
a
do
pretty good
too. I do
job.
too. I mean, even though I talked about David Harbour being just kind of a little bit more sort of mannered in his performance, like I get what he's doing. It's just that sometimes the writing itself, when he's delivering it, does sound, it just doesn't match sort
Yeah.
of the
I'm excited to
darker
watch this
tone.
one in Japanese though too,
But
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, and just going back to James Hong, just a treasure. That guy has been in over, like, well over 100 different films, television shows, in bit parts, and I mean, he's best known as Lo Pan in Big Trouble in Little China. But yeah, he's just so good as kind of like this menacing force, but also sort of comical, and it can be very misleading, up until, the character really kind of shows what he's made of, and
Yeah.
how much of a threat he is even at his age,
Yeah, loved
which I
that.
thought was really well done.
I love the rain on the lightsaber is something
Oh
I
yeah, the
haven't really thought
steam.
about. The steam
Oh
coming off
yeah,
the was so awesome.
that was
And
good.
then the pink lightning was dope as well. And then there's some other stuff at the very end of the episode that I would love to bring up, but I don't want to spoil anything. I also loved that the guy's name was Dan. Like, that's just funny to me. Like, Dan the Jedi is hilarious to me. Like, I know he's a Padawan in this, but like, um, Dan the Jedi is just the funniest sounding thing. Like when everyone has
It's
like,
just Dan now, Dad.
yeah, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of. Oh man.
But it is funny when
Um,
you get like, again, with the translation, you're getting some character names that are still, Japanese character names that translate, and then you're getting
mhm.
other characters like Dan,
I'm curious,
or
is his name Dan in the
I
Japanese version
I
too?
don't
But
know.
like,
I would be curious, or like even like Am, like you think like those names, and it's just weird when like you see the English translation of some of those names. Yeah, and Dan is Dan the Jedi.
it's so funny.
It'd be great if he had
Um,
a business card and it just said Dan the Jedi.
Dan Jedi. But I just like the circle of life in this, right? Of dealing with death and Jedi and Sith and balance and everything kind of comes full circle. So that's kind of what I liked this episode was playing with. Episode 8 was Lop and Ocho. Really liked this episode too. Again, sticking with those familial kind of things we've brought up of family and Dominic Toretto's favorite episode, probably this one, even though multiple episodes deal with family. But I loved how grainy and even if it was added in post, like digital film grain, like I still just right when the episode started, I'm like, I love this in widescreen with the film grain. I love this animation style. I loved the design of sorry, I gotta get her name of of both Lop and Ocho. I like her kind of looking like this kind of like rabbit creature. Thought that was dope. And I just
Ocha's the human sister, right?
yeah, and Lop was the rabbit girl.
That is, she is a little extreme when she
Yeah.
bites her thumb and uses that as like eyeliner. I was like,
Yeah.
that's, you don't need to do, they could have just given you some like
Man,
some
she's a
foundation or
badass.
something. But this is the episode again where I find like there's a lot of exposition and externalizing,
Sure.
where like you have the fight between Ocha and her father,
Mhm.
and the father kind of being this proud man of tradition, and sort of, again, where the story goes, containing the Jedi stuff, him basically saying everything that's happened up until that moment where, like, you're a daughter, it's basically
Yeah.
when, like,
You're explaining
Obi-Wan,
it, yeah.
yeah, when Obi-Wan in Revenge of the Sith is like, Anakin, you were the
You're
chosen
the chosen
one.
one! Yeah.
We were friends, I have the higher ground. Like, that's basically what they're doing. But there's just something that, like, again, it loses some meaning maybe in the translation when you have it dubbed.
I get that, yeah.
But I like the idea of the two sisters. But again, this is another one where, like, it didn't feel complete to me, and it was almost like this one was very confident in, like, okay, these characters will be back. Like,
Yeah, I could see that, and I definitely get that. I loved the Dragon Ball Z Scouter eye thing, like the
oh
what
yeah,
Vegeta has.
the power grade
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
that,
It's
yeah.
so I'm like,
It's
hell
over
yeah.
9,000.
Yeah,
But
it's
I didn't get
awesome.
what it was for in this. What was it
I think
used
she could just
for?
scan things and it would be like attached to some internet database where she could probably like, because I feel like she uses it at one point and the dad or something tells her she doesn't need to
Need
use
to
it or
see it. Yeah,
something.
just
Yeah,
look
yeah.
with your
Just look
eyes.
it with your eyes. So it must
Which
be
could
like
be a reference to people using their phones,
that.
right?
I totally agree with that. But yeah, I love the heel turn and just the idea that you don't even have to necessarily be a Jedi for with lightsabers and stuff like that. Like again, I
Or
think
you don't have
this,
to be blood, right, in order to be
yeah, and
family.
that
I
too,
mean, that's what
yeah.
Dom Toretto's been teaching us all
Exactly.
along.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly it. But I think there's some cool stuff in the last, and then the music just slaps so hard throughout this whole series. And I think that the end of this episode, I agree with you, is just asking for more or assuming you'll get more, which it won't always be the case. But I totally think it's okay sometimes to leave these on things, and you just get to make up what happens in your head. That's not the worst thing in the world either. And then episode 9, the final episode, Akiri. Um, so basically, in this one, I'm trying to think. Oh, this is the one you talked about, Eric, with kind of the more crude art style a little bit,
Yeah, which
right?
is kind of referencing Ralph Bakshi specifically, and then you have this, Jedi who's returning to a planet to assist a former princess who's been exiled
Right,
to
right.
back to her palace,
And
and
there's a
then
double
sort of,
crosser in the palace. Yeah,
yeah, and then there's another double cross, and sort of there's a
yeah,
twist with this Jedi who keeps envisioning something. And again, it
that's
kind of
it.
reminds
Thank
you
you.
of
Yeah, yeah.
Anakin a little bit as well, where it's like, I have to save her,
Yeah.
Padme.
And that's just part of the overall themes of it all, right? Like
Yeah.
again, going back to the music in this, you get little like kind of drums or bongos or whatever in the background that I thought was really cool. The establishing shots in this episode were absolutely gorgeous, like when they would pan out and you just see someone walking across like the forest or a vista or something like that. I thought those were really, really great.
I do think it
um
is the darkest of the 9 episodes, especially where it ends, and it is just interesting where why they decided, or whoever decided, this would be the
be the
last
last
episode for
one. Yeah,
season 1. And it's just kind of an interesting, like, I'm not against it. It's just weird to think that, like, oh wow, you're going out on, it's not even really a cliffhanger, because you could say, oh well, Empire um Strikes
yeah,
Back did that. Well, we knew that there was going to be a Return of the Jedi. With this, it's just kind of like, it's showing you sort of, a Jedi succumbing to something. And it just kind of, to me, feels a little bit like, oh wow, like I could see a lot of people reacting to this one and being like, oh man, this left me on such a low note at the
yeah.
end
And
of
it'll
it.
be curious to see in season 2 if they bring it back. Like, will they do the same studios doing continuations? Will they maybe spin off something like into like a full anime series about one of these like universes or stories or something like that? Like, but in this episode specifically, I liked the different style of lightsabers you saw. I liked that the lightsaber strokes as the one guy was fighting felt more samurai like they were those kind of very swift, like he's barely moving but he has really like
Well, it's all about the stance, right? And
yeah,
all about the
exactly.
waiting, and sort of just the
It's not
patience.
as bombastic as some
No.
lightsaber fights. It was very samurai like, and I really liked that. But yeah, it ends on a dark note, and which is a really interesting place to leave it. But overall, I think the series is awesome. I would take 10 more seasons of this, and whether each season tackles a different subject, if it's all going to be about kind of the Jedi and different stories about the Jedi, like I'm open to any of it. Like I'd even like to open this up. It's like, okay, this season was anime studios. I don't know what other style of animation studios you could, reach out to, especially independent ones that aren't in a big like corporation or something like that. But I'd be open. Like it just brings me going, oh, I would love to see Pixar do a Star Wars or a Marvel thing, or I would love a 2D Disney animated. Like, other thing, I just miss 2D animation, man. Like
Right.
I know anime's always kind of been that and still is. But North American animation has kind of gone to full CG and more, still cartoony, but
Or they
really
cut
detailed and
corners, right, in
like,
terms of its
yeah,
adaptation, because you even look at stop motion animation and how they've basically used 3D printers to kind of cut corners when it
yeah.
comes to
Where
facial
you can just
expressions,
upload the
right?
facial expression on the computer and animate their face that way instead of actually having the different faces and different things like that. So I miss 2D animation. So to see a whole series where there was only a couple CG shots in the whole thing was so refreshing. And I think that's why people still love anime. And like even me and you, we liked it when we were younger. Like recently, like I've always been interested into getting into something. Like I watched, people will roll their eyes if they're big anime fans, but I watched like Neo Yokio on Netflix, which is kind of, an American anime satirizing the genre with what's his name, Jaden Smith, and like and Jason Schwartzman, and it's from the guy, the musician from Vampire Weekend. I forget his name, but the guy from Vampire Weekend
It's
is
not
the
Zal Bat
creator.
Mangley, his brother,
No,
is it?
no. Oh, no. Vampire Weekend. I'm gonna get his name. His name is Ezra Koenig.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
So Ezra Koenig is the creator of Neo
That's a great
Yokio, and
Star
then
Wars name.
yeah, I
That would have
mean,
been a good Star Wars name.
get him to do one, because Neo Yokio, it got very mixed reviews, and I feel like hardcore anime fans probably didn't like it, but Nevis loves it. I loved it. It's very weird. It's kind of like if Wes Anderson made an anime. Like that's how I kind
So it
of
has a kind of tweed quality to
yeah,
it.
yes, exactly. I also really, I have the whole series of Cowboy Bebop, talking about, animes based in, space and stuff like that, and being a sci-fi. I do want to watch that before the live action Netflix series. And yeah, as a kid, I loved Pokemon, I loved Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z.
Well, there's a lot of
Um,
also just kind of adult quote unquote anime that's inspired a lot of American filmmakers, like Darren Aronofsky specifically. Like a huge influence on some of his earlier movies like Pi and Requiem for a Dream is from Perfect Blue. And
mhm.
Perfect Blue, for people that don't know, is this just completely out there movie musical about a pop star that is literally entering sort of like this weird sort of psycho melodrama. And it's one of the most unsettling experiences I've ever watched. And I remember watching it as a teen and thinking to myself, like, it's just one of those movies that if you see at the right age, I think it can really hit you in terms of like what you're influenced by. And I just remember watching that and thinking, wow, like this is like, on par with, some of the best surrealist filmmaking, but even stuff like, Taxi Driver and stuff. And it recently got a new Blu-ray release through Shout Factory. And it again, like there are shots that Darren Aronofsky has lifted
Yeah,
from this movie. And I mean, even like speaking of other filmmakers lifting stuff, I mean, like you look at something like Paprika that, Christopher Nolan has taken quite a bit from and using in movies like Inception. And we mentioned Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon, like in terms of like the American stuff that we've seen that's been vetted from Japanese television and film, and even, yeah, you mentioned Pokemon, Digimon. There's tons of it. And so thinking of both like the idea that like some of it's for kids, some of it's for more of an adolescent crowd, and then you get into the kind of the harder stuff, the stuff that is a little bit more kind of edgier, or not even necessarily violent. It can be something as whimsical as Your Name.
yeah,
It doesn't have to be necessarily like hard R violence
or
or
action
nudity or
stuff like
stuff
that.
like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what they do next with this series. If it goes in a different animation style, if they stay in anime and give it to different studios, if they invite some of these studios back to do second stories from the ones that were left open. Eric, how did you want to go about reviewing this? Because it's kind of
I think we
hard.
should
Like,
rate it. I think
okay,
we've seen for the first season, we've seen all the episodes, and we could come back and review it after seeing season 2 or compare it or what have you. But in terms of watching the 9 episodes and looking at it as a whole, like it's not like other shows that we've reviewed in the past where we've
where
only
we only
seen a couple of them and we can't give an overall review, where this I would feel more comfortable with giving a rating given that we've watched them all.
okay, cool. So I'm trying to look at my ratings here. I think I rated them all on Letterboxd. So
Right.
I'm
So you're
gonna
going to average it out.
I'm gonna kind of average it out. So I think I'm gonna give this series a 4 out of 5. I really, really liked it. I think, like Eric's mentioned on a lot of anthology series that we've talked about, some are going to be better than others. My favorite episodes being The Village Bride, The Elder, Lop and Ocho, The Duel. Those are kind of the upper tier of ones that I all think are like 4-star and above. And then you get some, 3.5. And then, I gave Tatooine Rhapsody a 2.5 on my first watch. I would probably bump that up to a 3. So I'm gonna land on a 4 out of 5. I really, really like the series a lot.
Yeah. And again, I was critical throughout this, but I think it's important to sort of look at what this is doing and sort of not be afraid to kind of sort of deconstruct some of these ideas. But I will also give it a 4 out of 5. And this, even though, we've gotten a lot of Star Wars since, JJ Abrams brought it back, I would say for the most part, everything that we've gotten here has been either worthwhile, or at least interesting. And I think my biggest hesitation going into this was thinking this could just almost be sort of a cash grab. Because the one thing I kept thinking about before even watching this was with the Matrix, where it became so popular that
Animatrix.
the Animatrix, which is terrible, like it is so
I don't
bad,
remember it, but like
it's so half baked, and like a lot of it again is not about
I'm gonna rewatch
Neo
it
or
before Matrix 4 comes
right.
out. But
Well, good luck. You're gonna need it. Thankfully with Star Wars Visions, it didn't end up being that. It felt like it was more than just, okay, we've been commissioned to do something that is within the Star Wars universe. Like they're actually bringing something to the table. Then it's just not like, okay, we want to make some extra money on this, franchise that we can exploit further. Where the Matrix movies, even in the sequels, felt like that, in my opinion, and even more so the Animatrix, which nobody remembers unless you
you're
were,
like a diehard, yeah.
yeah. And it's just, I just remember watching that and thinking to myself how terrible it was.
Well, thank you all for listening. It's definitely worth your time. I say watch it both subbed and dubbed. I really think it's worth it. And it looks great, Eric, too, on because you probably watched all the screener versions. I watched them in like on Disney Plus today in 4K in Dolby Vision, and it looked spectacular because our screener versions sometimes don't look the best. But if you guys want more Star Wars Visions talk, like I mentioned, I appeared on the Kinda Funny screencast today. You can head over there to get Tim and Andy and Nick's impressions as well as mine. Barrett pops in a couple times, so you can just search for Kinda Funny screencast on YouTube or podcast services, and you should see a Star Wars Visions episodes 1 to 3 kind of reaction. So I popped up over there. Let me know how you think I did. I was nervous and I felt like I was way more comfortable here because like I'm always just comfortable with Eric, and not that those guys are hard to talk to. It's just I'm always like I feel like there's pressure even though there's not.
Did you talk about McDonald's days?
No, not
Oh,
yet. No. Because yeah, Greg put out the McGriddle. Are you a McGriddle or a McMuffin guy? Do you know what I'm
uh,
talking about?
I mean,
So Greg Miller of Kinda Funny,
yeah.
he put out McMuffins are better than McGriddles. And then all the McGriddle people came at him. And then he posted the question, are McMuffins better than McGriddles? It
Egg
kind of took off
McMuffins rule. I don't know
his
about griddles.
it took off on his account. McDonald's jumped on it, did official thing on their account. It's all because of Greg. It made it trending and stuff like that. And it's always been 50-50 on the vote. And it boggled my mind
I don't
of
think I've ever
like
had a griddle
a
before.
McGriddle. They're
Griddle,
like the
no.
pancake instead of like it's like a pancake bun. for an Egg McMuffin. So
No,
you still
thank you.
get the
No,
egg
thank
and
you,
cheese.
sir.
They're
No,
good.
thank you.
I bet you when you have, I'm not here to shit talk McGriddles because like I like a McGriddle, but a McGriddle is like a treat, a special treat. You're like, you know what? I'm feeling a little sweet this
An
morning.
Egg McMuffin or a McMuffin in general
Was
is
the
universal.
unofficial sponsor of TIFF 2021 for the Untitled Movie Podcast. I ate like 100 Egg McMuffins during. Did I order a McGriddle once? No, because I feel like that's just, again, it's a weird sweet treat you want once in a while where you're like, I want pancake buns. Like maybe if I'm stoned or if it's just like I haven't had one in a long time and I'm like, all right, I want a McGriddle. I don't know. I wouldn't be stoned that early in the morning, most likely, but because I think they only serve the McGriddle till 11. Anyways, check out all of our reviews over on Untitled Movie Reviews on YouTube and podcast services. You can catch our main show over on Untitled Movie Podcast, same spots. If you want like a one-stop shop for everything, head over to Untitled_movies on our Letterboxd HQ. We'll have links. I don't know how I'm going to upload these because we'll have to like rate each episode individually or something because I don't think they have it up as a whole. I'll figure that part out. But as always, my name is Matt Rohrbeck. You can find more of my work around the internet, but mostly at untitledmoviepodcast.com. And you can follow me on all those social medias at Matt Rohrbeck.
And I'm Eric Martin. You can find more of my video reviews at rogerstv.com/cinemascene and on the social medias at EM6211.
Until next time.
I don't want no dub. A dub isn't going to get any love from me hanging out of the passenger side of his best friend ride, trying to holler at me.
May the force be with you.